Welcome to Mindful Chatting. Today, I want to start off by asking you with the question. When you make a mistake, who do you sound like? Like, seriously, when you forget something, when you disappoint someone, when you aren't productive enough, or when you feel like you failed, what's the first thing your inner voice says to you? For a long time, I thought those thoughts were just me. I thought I was naturally hard on myself, naturally self critical, naturally someone who always expected more from myself. But over time, I started to realize something. Some of those thoughts weren't mine, they were inherited. And today I want to talk about something that's deeply personal, but I know I'm not alone in this. What growing up with maybe a toxic mother or a toxic parent taught me and maybe you about love and about yourself and about the beliefs that maybe you carried into adulthood, because I sure did. And of course, without us ever realizing it. But don't worry, we're going to unpack it together.
Welcome to Mindful Chatting, a podcast where therapy meets real life. I'm Kristen, a therapist, business owner, and a lifelong student of what it means to fully show up in our relationships, in our work, and in our healing. Here, we unpack mental health concepts, explore mindfulness tools, and talk through the messy, beautiful, in-between moments that shape us. Whether you're a fellow clinician, a curious listener, or someone navigating your own growth, this space is for you. Let's chat.
I think one of the hardest truths in psychology is children don't evaluate their caregivers, they evaluate themselves. And when something feels really painful for them, a child rarely thinks maybe my parent was emotionally unavailable. Instead, they think maybe I'm too much, maybe I'm not enough, or maybe if I was easier or quieter or better, then all of this would stop. Those beliefs don't disappear when we grow up. They often become the lens through which we see ourselves, maybe other people, and maybe the world. Children don't question whether they're lovable, they question whether they are. Sometimes toxic parenting doesn't teach behaviors, it teaches us beliefs. Beliefs like, I have to earn love, or my needs are a burden, or I shouldn't make mistakes, or keeping the peace is my responsibility. If someone is upset, it's probably my fault. I have to prove my worth. Those beliefs can quietly shape friendships, marriages, parenting, work, and even the way that we talk to ourselves. So, one of the things that I recognize is that my tendency to maybe over explain myself or maybe feel responsible for other people's emotions or struggling to believe compliments that people give me, or maybe even feeling guilty when I rest, was something that maybe was brought on by my childhood. And it took me a long time to really recognize that some of the things that became habitual for me was actually something that was placed upon me when I was small. And I think it's insidious in the way that it shows up because we think, oh, this just must be my personality. This just must be who I am. When really we're not self reflecting enough to really look at, where did this come from? Why did this show up? There's a lot of theories about inheriting and nature versus nurture and us being born as like a blank slate. But if we really think about it from very, very small, if you were to look at how, caregivers or really important people in your life used to talk to you or how they would treat you when you were small and you made mistakes, I bet a lot of the verbiage and the articulation that they used, you may also be using it on yourself. And a lot of this doesn't come out until we start self reflecting or maybe going to therapy and realizing, like, wow, I am really self critical, or maybe I am pessimistic, or maybe I am critical of the people around me because maybe I just didn't trust them. And I don't want to blame a parent or blame a circumstance. I always feel like parents are always doing the best that they can with what they have. And being a mother myself, I recognize that. But at the same time, we need to understand why these things are important, because then we can change how we want to talk to ourselves and ultimately talk to our children if we already have them, or maybe we have them in the future. And I think this is what generational trauma is, of we're taking and inheriting beliefs and things that people have placed upon us, and we're taking those and ingraining those in our own personal beliefs and putting them on other people ourselves. And we need to recognize that we have the ability to change this, and ability to change how this generationally passed down, not only for ourselves, but for our children and the people around us.
If you're working on staying present and grounded, which me too, we all need, especially when your brain wants to spiral into what we call disconnection. Yeah, it's Brain FM. It's musically designed to help ADHD brains, well, really any brain, to focus, relax, sleep, and I use it almost daily. If you want to try it, I've dropped my link in the show notes. And if you're looking for planning tools and ADHD resources, they're in there too.
So, one of the things that I do with clients in sessions with me is I kind of go over some different questions to understand where these inner voices are coming from. And one of the most healing exercises I've done with people is asking, whose voice is this? So, let's walk through this kind of like an audit. So, question one is, when I make a mistake, what does my inner voice quickly say? So for me, usually if I make a mistake and I'm in my kind of critical voice, the first thing that will pop in is like, oh my gosh, you're so dumb, or you're so stupid, or why did you do that? You're so much better than that. Or what made you think that you could do that? And look, you failed. I really want you to think about the automatic thing that comes to you, even though logically you know that, like, that's not how you maybe truly believe, or, but I really want you to think about what's that first thing that pops into your head when you make a mistake or you notice that you've made a mistake. The second question is, what belief about myself does that reveal? So when you say things like, I shouldn't have done that, I'm so stupid, what's wrong with me? What does that really mean? So if someone were to say that to themselves, what does that reveal about you? Does that mean that you believe that? Does that mean that you don't give yourself grace? Does that mean that you're not allowed to make mistakes? Question three is, where did I learn that? So when you think about the automatic, that may also pop up a person in your head when you think about the automatic response. But if someone doesn't necessarily pop up for you in the automatic response, I want you to think about the belief. Where did the belief of this idea that I think about myself or perceive myself or don't give myself a grace, or I'm not allowed to have mistakes, or I should know better, where did that come from? And usually that'll bring up a certain person or a certain trauma or an experience that we had that will kind of bring that part up. And then the question four is this belief, this thing that's being brought to my attention, helping me? Or is it keeping me stuck? Does the idea of not allowing make mistakes, or you should know better, is that actually helping you grow? Is that actually helping you heal? Or is it keeping you stuck where you are? Does that overwhelm you? Does that get you caught up in things? Does it actually make you progress forward? And then the last question, question five, is, if I were speaking to someone I loved, or a child, or someone that was very close to me, what would I say instead? That's the voice we're trying to strengthen. And it may sound really uncomfortable. It may sound kind of cheesy and corny, but that's because you haven't spoken to yourself like that. Or maybe you haven't had anyone in your life actually speak to you in an unconditional positive regard, in a way where they unconditionally love and accept you, even if you do make mistakes. I think one of the things that I've realized through my own healing is that understanding where a belief came from doesn't excuse the hurtful behavior, but it does give me a choice. I don't have to keep speaking to myself the way I was spoken to. I don't have to keep measuring my worth by standards that I never really got to choose. Healing for me has looked less like erasing the past and more like learning to become a kinder narrator of my own life.
If you want to understand your ADHD in a deeper way, I've created the ADHD Crash Course, and it walks you through ADHD step by step so that you can actually start understanding your brain and not shaming it. Everything's in small, doable lessons designed for your ADHD in mind. The link is in the show notes.
Healing doesn't require perfect parents. And I think this is really important for me to say that. This episode isn't about labeling your caregivers or your parents as being bad. It's not about diagnosing anyone, and it's not about deciding whether someone was good or bad in your life. Most families are really complicated and complex. Most people are doing the best they can with what they know. But acknowledging that someone loved you doesn't mean every lesson they taught you was healthy. You can hold compassion and boundaries at the same time with people. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. This week, I want to challenge you and I want you to notice one self critical thought you have. And when you notice that, I just want you to pause. And instead of asking yourself, why do I think this way? I want you to change it to, where did I learn this? And then ask, is this the voice I want guiding my life right now? If there's one thing I hope you remember from today's conversation, it's this: not every belief you've carried belongs to you. Some were handed to you before you were even old enough to question them. But now you get to question them. You get to decide which stories you keep and which voices you strengthen and which beliefs no longer deserve a place in your life. Because healing isn't becoming someone new, it's slowly returning to the version of yourself that existed before shame convinced you otherwise. I want to thank you for joining me. And as always, be gentle with your mind.